That's where he goes. That's where he goes for the IMAX to do like preview screenings of his films. That's the one he goes to. And other people have said that they've seen it. And also, I think it was Ross, it might be somebody else though, was telling me he goes to Burbank. That's like his local Burbank AMC 16. And he goes there to their IMAX when a new movie comes out, like an Avatar or something like that. And apparently he sits front row, center seat, because that's like so he can be completely immersed in the film. You can't see the edges, all that kind of thing, you know. So yeah, if anybody ever sees that, anybody's out there and knows that Nolan's going to be there or wants to go to the AMC IMAX 16 on April 24th when Michael's released, see if he's there watching it in IMAX.
So tell me about this with Michael, and then we're going to hop into the drama, which I'm super excited to chat about. But Michael is a Netflix movie, right? Or
no? I don't think so. It's a Lionsgate movie. Yeah. And from what right, it's all starting to come out now. So they've clearly had the preview screenings very recently, like within the last 2 days, because you had Snoop Dogg saying this is an A+ movie, great, and all that kind of stuff. So he's been posting about it. But also Variety have released a lot of information about just today about what the story's about, what it's cut out. And I'm not telling stories out of school here when I say this, but literally they had it filmed a year ago, more than a year ago, and they've had to cut out most of the third act because it included Geordie Chandler, the Geordie Chandler story, and they had to cut all of that because in the agreement with Michael Jackson, there was the agreement that with the payoff, they wouldn't dramatize him. And that's the story. So they had to reshoot the third act. That's when I got involved. I was, working on as a PA when they reshot pretty much that whole third act, which was an amazing experience, as I said. And I don't know if it was a brand new crew or whether it was the same crew. I know there was a few people from the original crew who've been working on this thing for a few years. So it's a massive undertaking, though, to do Michael Jackson's story. And yeah, it's already coming out that there is very likely going to be a part 2. You know what I mean? That's what people are saying. So, yeah, give it a watch, and we'll be talking about it on future Film Hangs.
I'm excited to talk about Michael Jackson's biopic. And what's interesting is I would not say that I'm the audience. And I feel like you've put that a lot of people behind the scenes think this movie is going to cross the $1 billion, maybe even $2 billion mark, which seems a little bit lofty. But I'm really excited just to see what audiences like about it, if it does well at the box office. Right now, films are particularly doing pretty successful. I think Q1, based on what I saw in the news, was the best quarter since COVID, which is good to see, especially considering the way the industry is positioned right now and a lot of the negative sentiment that's coming out of just opportunity, job loss, and everything in between. But it was good to see that Q1 is doing so well. But then something on the downside was, I think, since, I don't know if you remember the year, but maybe it was 2020, there's been 200 plus theaters that have closed, specifically AMC theaters, with 83 more about to go up this year with no conversation of renewing those leases. So what's sad is, what I always drive by is the Regal Cinema in Sherman Oaks. And for those that have lived in Los Angeles and remember circa 2016 when Los Angeles was in a far better place, it felt like no matter what corner you went onto, there was a film production active or all the lots were busy. It was easy to even find just PA work. 10 years ago, and not to say that the film was always easy to get into, but just because of the abundance of opportunity and how healthy the market was, there was a lot of opportunity around that time to be able to get started in some capacity. But what was the best was ArcLight. ArcLight was my favorite cinema to go to. And back then you had AMC, ArcLight, Regal, King Edwards. At that time, Alamo Drafthouse was just coming to Los Angeles, so that was super popular. There was an abundance of options. And you also had the Landmark. All of the Landmark theaters. You had the Laemmle theaters.
They're still around. Just fewer.
They're still around. Just fewer of them. There used to be so many movie theaters, and right now I feel like it's super easy to just go to AMC because of stubs, but even before, you know, AMC had stubs, I loved the ArcLight, and I miss that theater chain so much. I don't
Mhm.
know.
There's a guy who is right now protesting. I think they're called foremen. They're the people who own the dome, the Cinerama
Yeah.
Dome. And I've been to the Cinerama Dome, I think, since because I came out to LA, 8 years ago. I've been to the Cinerama Dome, I think, 3 times, right? And it was breathtaking. I think the first time I went to the Cinerama Dome, and it wasn't through not wanting to go. I really, really did want to go. I just never got to go. And then I went to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I literally got it behind me, the poster, right? And it was just breathtaking. And it's like experiences like that and theaters like that. It's kind of makes it all part of the experience. I understand there's
Yeah.
going to be people out there that are like, yeah, I watched this film on streaming. They're all going to do it. It's fine. I get that. Okay. But there is just something. And the movie we're going to talk about today is one of those where when you watch a movie with an audience, there's something really quite electric about it, especially when you're in these really quite vibrant sort of film theaters.
Yeah.
Here's a cool thing for you. When I was back in Richmond for a film festival over there, which is like, I suppose, East Coasty, they had old film theaters, old film cinemas, right? That had things like the projectors themselves and stuff, and they had to have a guard on them, right? So that they could project the film through this guard. And if the guard wasn't on, this guy was showing me on this big screen of this old bird theater that was in Richmond, right? That goes back to like the 1920s, early, sort of showing Chaplin films when they first came out and stuff. And they took the guard off, and he was showing me Big Lebowski, and you can see, like, the sound guy with his boom mic and like a PA sort of in the back of shot and stuff because the guard's going to be covering for them when it's projecting. So when you take the
Oh,
guard off, you
wow.
can actually see the sides of the frame. And I was just like, it's like going to a museum or an art gallery when you go and do that at one of these old cinemas. And I think that LA, we've got so many that are now shut. The Dome is shut. The
Which is crazy.
Sherman Oaks Galleria, shut. That one. That was an art light. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's now Regal, I think, right? Or did Regal close
Is
as
it?
well? Yeah.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, this is the problem. There's all these different ones, and now we've got these independently owned ones, like Quentin Tarantino's one, the Vista, and
Then
the new Bev
the
just
new
appeared.
Biff. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
But like, these are ones that are just gonna have to be bought. We're gonna have to just go for it. You know what I mean? We're gonna have to. This is how cinema's gonna have to be. People are gonna
The
have to now
fact that
privately invest in, I think.
The fact that the Cinerama Dome is a LA historical landmark, something that is worth preservation and is not
Mm.
open even in just a museum capacity or kept up with in any capacity. They've let it go destitute, and it's unfortunate to see that. It's like literally a part of LA culture. I even have the original pamphlet in my house that was given out on the opening of the Cinerama Dome. It's like if you go through it, it
Oh, that's
shows the
cool.
technology from the original like experience when you would go and watch a movie. And it was very limited choices. It really didn't even last that long because it was way too expensive to
Yeah.
operate and shoot productions. But I have it sitting in my room or in my living room here and I look at it all the time. And it's unfortunate that it's something that's not kept up with as a theater or just some type of like space in general. It's not good.
Mm.
You know, and I wish Los Angeles and even Hollywood, there's so much opportunity to speak to the culture of filmmaking within this city. And what I see is dilapidated vans driving around. That's like movie set sites,
Mm.
and they don't look quite that nice. And, I feel like there's an opportunity for the local city to develop some type of tourist attraction that really
Mhm.
showcases and appreciates and loves film history in Los Angeles. But any opportunity we have to do that, I feel like it's immediately diluted. You know, I don't
You're
know.
right. You're right. And then cinemas as well. Think about what, the fact that cinemas chat. I mean, I have to say, that's what when you speak to people who aren't necessarily cinephiles like we are, but are like,
Yeah.
the casual goer, when you talk about the cinematic experience, they talk about the cost of the popcorn. They talk about the overpricing, the price gouging on everything. And I understand that's what cinemas need to do to make their money back. But it's extortionate. It's $40 for two
Dude.
two popcorns and a drink. It's
And
insane.
what And what's crazy, what is the nicest theater in Los Angeles right now, in my opinion, and is also the cheapest, is the Egyptian, which who owns that?
Mm,
Netflix. All of the Netflix
yeah.
theaters in Los Angeles are some of the best theatrical experiences you can have. It has a nice bar. It
Mm,
has people that greet you as you go into the movie theater. If you live in Los Angeles and you haven't been in the Egyptian since they renovated it, it is
mhm,
by far one of the best theater experiences. You go, you can get the Netflix magazine. You can go and their
mm,
popcorn's like $10. It's not $20 for just a tub of like crappy popcorn that you get at AMC. The tickets are not that
nice.
expensive and consider in comparison to this like some of the other competitors. It is a great theatrical experience. Now it's a one screen theater, so you're not going to be able to get the full AMC multiplex like experience that you get
Mhm.
there. But Netflix, for someone that's not even really putting that many movies in theaters, their cinema experience is actually far better than anything else in the city, in my opinion.
I'd agree with you on that. I'd agree with you on that. I think that what they did for Wake Up Dead Man was great. I think
Hmm.
that was the last screen I went to that was at the Egyptian. It's great. You know what I mean? Oh, in
Hmm.
fact, no. I think they did Running Man. They did that for one thing. I'm not sure if that was Netflix or not, but that was a great one to go to the Egyptian for. So yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. And Vidiots I'd agreed to. Things like Vidiots are
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I sent
Videos
you
is
a
a good
thing
one.
today, Sweeney. I mean, I think sent you a thing I know we're going to get onto this, and we've been talking now for 10 minutes about something completely opposite. But Vidiots is such a great idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll show all kinds of classic movies and things like that. And they've also got this great DVD library that you can go
It's a
and delve into.
nonprofit, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. It's
Hmm.
great. We went and saw The Knife there, and yeah, that was my first proper experience of Idiots, and I was like, I need
Hmm.
places like this. You know, I sent you something that was in Boston that's just closed. That was like a big garage that they got like 25 people in, and they just were playing cult movies. I think they put The Thing on at one point. You know, they were playing like these cult classics, and people would show up and bring their own beer and stuff, bring their own chairs.
Yeah.
Some of them. It's great. I like Cinespia. There's a great cinematic experience there where you can go and watch old movies and just sit in the middle of a cemetery, you know, in
I know. I've
LA, which
never
is
done that.
quite a cool thing.
What's cool about Vidiots is I don't know, and we're gonna move on to the next thing, but they have that micro
Yeah.
screen that movie kind of presents on, and that's how I got to see By
Mm.
Guys Resurrection was in the second screen at that theater. We got to check that out sometime.
How
But all right,
big's that
everyone.
then? How many people
Oh,
fit in that
that's
one?
only like maybe 30 people or less. It's
Oh,
small.
that's good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super small.
All right,
But all
carry
right,
on,
Chris.
Sweeney. Introduce it.
Yeah. We are back for another The Film Hang. Super excited to hop into this conversation about the drama, which most recently came out last week. And Chris and I both had the opportunity to see it. To kind of kick it off,
Mhm.
if you don't know me, my name is Brendan Sweeney, CEO of Filmmakers Academy, filmmaker as well. I've worked in the film industry for a long time. And these conversations are all about talking cinema. And we've got Chris. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Oh, thanks, Sweeney. Yeah, I'm Chris Haigh. I've worked on a bunch of films, but also I just love talking about films. And I've come across from England. That's why I speak differently to everybody else. But yeah, I love it. I love film. I love the film hang. We came up with this because us two just enjoy having talks about film. We go and see a movie, and we want to call each other up and have a chat about it. So we thought we'll just do this and see if there's other people out there who want to talk film with us and hang out.
Absolutely. So, Christopher Borgli's The Drama. I got to see this
Mhm.
last Thursday. I think you as well, Chris, on the launch day of this movie in theaters. And I guess before going directly into how we felt, I was super excited for this movie. It was building a lot of anticipation. Zendaya, Robert
Mhm.
Pattinson, a director who's really been making a name for himself over the last couple of years with Sick of Myself and then Dream Scenario, which I think Dream Scenario, that was Neon, right? And this is his first A24 film, or was Dream Scenario? No, that was A24
I
as
think Dream
well.
Scenario was A24
Yeah,
too. Yeah, I think he's been one of their
yeah,
sort of stable. He's gone through quite a few films with them.
yeah. And I know we went back and forth with what this next episode should be. And I was like, hey, what about the drama? And, there's a lot of controversy
Mhm.
building around, or speculation, if you will, based on what this film was going to be, just because it honestly had a really strong marketing approach. And I don't know how you felt about that, Chris, but one of the things that I really liked about this movie, and this isn't even being, a Christopher Borgli fan, really until this movie. I don't even know that I've seen any
Mhm.
of his other films. So this was my first of his films to watch. I had a good friend, Santiago Calogero, who spoke really highly of Kristoffer Borgli being one of the few
Mhm.
direct or like contemporary directors that gets him exciting in a world that, and he's very critical of like modern cinema. He said that he was one of the
Mhm.
directors today that actually made him interested in watching modern movies. So I always kind of
Yeah.
had that in the back of my mind, but I never chased down watching any of his films. And then I saw the marketing for this movie, and this was before I even knew he did it, where I saw what is the
Mm.
drama. And what's funny is it kind of pairs really well with The Materialist being this wedding kind of drama film, maybe not so much about like a
Mhm.
romantic triangle, but about this character who ultimately divulges something that seems a bit sinister. You don't know what that's going to be and what the implications of what she says to her friends um, is to the rest of the movie. But I was excited. You know, I think that was my initial perception. It's like, okay, I like Zendaya. I like what she does as an actor. Robert Pattinson's a favorite. And then I saw Kristoffer Borgli attached and I was very curious. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, you started it, Sweeney. You know, you were the one who basically said, "Why don't we do the drama?" And I think this comes down to what you were saying about the marketing of it. I'd heard things about it, which I wish I'd not, but I'd heard things about this film, and I was kind of reticent as to whether it was going to work, whether it wasn't, and then went and saw it on Thursday and thought, "This is going to be one of our coolest discussions." And I think that looking at it in terms of the marketing point of view, A24, from what I read, they deliberately concealed the premise of this film, which is obvious, and it's understandable why they did, okay? But it wasn't just the way that they concealed it. They were also pretty much pitching this as like the romantic comedy of the year. You know what I mean? I mean, I wrote down some of the things just in sort of prepping for this. I thought, what have they done on this press tour to market this film? And they did things like they did all love themed content, what people are doing on the lead up to their wedding, what people did that was shocking on their wedding day, what shocking wedding events happened. You know what I mean? And it was all very light-hearted. It was all very kind of skin deep kind of stuff, really. And then they also were having things like, I think there was one thing I saw online that was like the cast had to do a kind of like a giving advice to people in the lead up to their wedding or giving people relationship advice. And they were doing like a phone in kind of thing. And then there was Zendaya surprising people in Vegas at wedding chapels. So there was all that kind of the way that it was
Mhm.
sort of literally doing performative rom-com marketing. And then something that somebody said on Twitter, so this isn't my idea, but what they said, what I found really fascinating was as we got closer to the event, as we got closer to the release of the movie, it was almost like the relationship went down the route. You know, we started seeing sort of them bruised up and blooded and things like that and people being sick. And as we moved down closer to the release of the movie, we started to see sort of the descent in their sort of relationship, which is exactly what mirrors really what goes on in the movie after this shocking revelation, as we're going to call it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, so I thought the marketing in this movie was fantastic. I thought, like, looking back on it now, having seen the film, I thought, what a very interesting way to market a movie this has been. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, the people that gave away the subject matter, sadly, was like TMZ was what I saw that released this, and they released something where basically, if I can tell, do you think I should? I can say what the movie's about, right, Sweeney? So that way I can talk about it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everyone,
it's
spoiler
basically a
alert.
romantic. Yeah, spoiler alert. So if you've watched this far, then thanks so much for being with us for 16 minutes. But no, I mean, you can join back in probably halfway through. But like, it's a romantic dark comedy about a happily engaged couple, and they're on the lead up to their wedding, and their relationship goes through the ultimate test when they play this drunken game that's kind of like a what's the worst thing you've ever done in your life, or what's the worst thing you've ever contemplated doing, or something like that. I'm trying to remember what the name of the game was. But they played this game, and then Zendaya admits, amongst them all, they all admit some terrible things that they've done. And it's basically the couple, which is Zendaya and Robert Pattinson, and the best man and the maid of honor who happen to be in a relationship as well. And they're sitting there and they're drunk and they have this conversation, and basically it comes out that Zendaya's character contemplated a school shooting when she was a teenager. And that leads the relationships that she shares with these three people to go through an awful lot of strain and tests. and that becomes subject matter for what is, as I said, a dark comedy and has some
Mhm.
very funny moments in it. Um, TMZ gave that away, and they gave that away by having meetings with, like they brought in to comment on it, fathers of people who have died in mass shootings and things like that. So they did effectively what Alana Haim's character does in this movie, which is to make it personal and try and focus it on, this one is as bad as that, and so on and so forth. And that kind of led me into this movie with a presupposition of it. And in fact, there were people in that movie theater that I guarantee had read the same thing I had or had heard the same thing I had. So it became also more marketable because it was like you had this split in the audience of people who knew, what was going to come, and then this surprise came and they were already kind of anticipating it. And then and it's about 20 minutes in that this surprise kind of is revealed. And then there's the other people who are in the theater who are saying that they felt deceived by the marketing and they're kind of shocked. And they go through an almost acceptance period while watching the movie,
Mhm.
of how they themselves feel about it. I wish I'd gone in like that, and I didn't, and I'll never get that back. So that's one of the things that I have against whoever, released that information. You automatically affect the audience's natural reaction when you reveal a spoiler like that without saying it's gonna be a spoiler.
So
You know what I
you
mean? So
knew what she did going into it is what you're saying.
correct, and it
Yeah.
affected the way I viewed the movie. However, I will say, Um, I'm really glad I saw that movie, and I'm really glad because I went to a beer festival on Sunday and I talked to people about that movie. 3 days later, I'm still talking about that movie. We're now 5 days after it's been released, and Sweeney, I can't wait for us to have a proper dive into this because it was such a phenomenal. I've never seen a movie like that with a crowd like that have gone through that kind of experience, and I saw Megalopolis on opening day, you know what I mean? I've never been in a theater that and experienced that. Not necessarily polarity, but certainly kind of uncomfortable acceptance, humor. Should I laugh? Shouldn't I laugh? How am I feeling about laughing? My wife next to me, there was points where she was like, "I wonder why people are laughing at that and not that." Whereas I was finding things hilarious.
Mhm.
It's a I think Christopher Borgli as an artist has really, really stirred something up with this movie for me. I thought it was really cleverly put together, written, and released. I think the whole thing has been incredibly well done in that respect. However people feel about it, I think that the way that this movie has been sent out by A24 is a masterpiece, and it's proven it's already made its money back. So
Mhm.
they've done
I
wonderful with independent cinema.
I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Chris. This movie, which I'll say I was like kind of excited for it going into, it crept up on the calendar. I was like, oh crap, let's talk about this film. And I was super excited to see it
Mhm,
opening night. And what's great is that's just what I want more from cinema, stuff that's taking chances.
mhm,
And despite where you fall with what the characters did on like a moral spectrum, it was very interesting characters in a very interesting situation that was ultimately fulfilling and really like dug into some concepts that we all have to deal with as individuals living in especially American culture in 2026. And it didn't feel scared to ask the hard questions, especially about those around and you got to
mhm,
see characters which it did a really good job of making you fall in love with like Emma and Charlie, and Rachel and Mike seem
mhm,
like cool friends within their circle until you ultimately get to know what Emma's character thought of doing, which was potentially shooting up her classmates in this school. But then it really plays off of the larger question of just because you thought of something and ultimately did not act, even though they make an argument which it seems like she came pretty close to, does that still condemn the person if they were able to kind of like pivot away from that and continue living their life and not ultimately doing what they had thought all those years later. And then there's Rachel's character,
mhm,
which Rachel and Charlie are the ones that actually end up doing something within this film. And we'll kind of jump around into this and then go deeper into the movie. But at first, it's really interesting because you hate what Zendaya's character could have been capable of. But then you kind of see
mhm,
what the other characters are capable of doing and actually put into action and then who ultimately is the worst person at the end of the film. It does a really good job of also just thinking, if you are in a relationship, if my significant other were to say, "Hey, I've had these thoughts in the past," where would that put you as someone that's supposed to love them, especially if you're about to have your marriage or to get married? You
Mm,
know, I thought it was just a great film of what would I do in that situation? And obviously, Kristoffer Borgli, what most important he was able to do is just, even though the film had set pieces, it was a very confined and claustrophobic film, but he did so much with so little. And not only speaking
mm,
to it, just showcasing it through really strong filmmaking. And if there's anything I know about him, that's what he's so good at, is being a filmmaker, breaking down concepts, showing characters interacting, but being able to do it very visually, even when the film is confined to like interiors of rooms, right? So
mm.
it just operates on so many levels, but
Yeah.
I really loved it.
Who was the cinematographer? Was it? I wrote it down, but I may have misspelled it because it was like Kachachuran or something like that. That was the name of
Yeah.
the
I
DP,
didn't know how
right?
to
And it
say
was
his
somebody who was
name.
pretty. No, well, I might have butchered it there, so I apologize. But I thought that that was exceptional all the
Yeah,
way through this. The way
Arsenic
that it was shot,
Kachachuran, I think.
yeah, that really hit
Yeah.
home.
Mhm.
Like, just the look of the movie itself, and the fact that look at I mean, you were just talking about it there. I mean, like, the way it was structured was really beautiful as well. We start off in this idealistic coffee shop, you know what I mean? And that was one of like, you start off with she's sitting there reading this book, headphone in, and you have this really kind of, you know, everything's clean, everything's sort of very bourgeois and everything like this. And then where do we finish? I always think about where do we start? Where do we finish? We finish up in
Yeah.
this greasy spoon cafe. He's ordered a cheeseburger and a Diet Coke. She's ordered something as well. It's, they're both kind of messed up and everything like this. It's like you've seen this whole transformation. And I just thought that,
Mhm.
again, it's just really, really cleverly put together. I think that I keep mentioning that, but that's
Yeah, the
that's how I
writing was
felt about this whole
strong.
movie. Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, like you were just saying there, we become obsessed with what she almost did, or the friends become obsessed. I think that we do too. It's definitely Christopher Borgli making a commentary on the way people act towards people who almost did something shocking, or people who are open enough to admit to something shocking that they thought about doing. And there's a bit in it where Robert Pattinson says there's all these people every day that are out there that are possibly thinking of awful things to do. You know what I mean? And it's like we become obsessed with what she almost did instead of recognizing that she didn't actually do it. You know what I mean? We've made the thought worse than the action. I think was such a really clever sort of thing for us to play
Mhm.
on in our minds. You looked at again, I talk about it, Rachel, which is the Alana Haim character. She instantly makes it about, oh well, I had a cousin who, was injured in a completely separate event. You know what I mean? We make it personal to us when somebody says they thought about something or something like that, or they make a joke about it. And there were people in the audience with me that were clearly uncomfortable because they either knew something or they weren't comfortable with school shootings or the thing. And I thought using that, the biggest taboo probably in America right now, using that as a sort of reference point for doing dark humor was something completely fresh. It was a little bit it reminded me of. Have you ever seen a movie called Four Lions, Brendan?
No, I haven't seen that.
There's a movie called Four Lions with Christopher Morris in it. Sorry, Christopher Morris directed it. It has Rez Ahmed. The guy who's in, Sound of
Mhm.
Metal, and he's been in a bunch of movies. He's, he's one of the main guys in it. Now that is about suicide bombers in Northern England, right? Who are planning to do as I said, commit a bombing at the London Marathon, right? And that's the basis of a comedy, right? Yeah, Four Lions. It's a comedy by Chris Morris, and the humor comes from that dark humor of them, you know, messing up a terrorism video and all this kind of stuff. And it is, as I said, I remember when this came out in England and there was this shock and horror from 7/7 survivors and people who survived
Mhm.
some shocking events. But using that as the basis, it's kind of like telling a 9/11 joke. It's something that is right on that cusp. Pete Davidson does it a lot in his humor. It's right on that cusp, and you're gonna polarize people with it. And this one definitely did in England, but it's a very clever. dark comedy that I would highly recommend.
What
I think
other
it's on
dark
Amazon Prime.
comedies?
If people,
Yeah. Do you enjoy this type of like commentaries or any other like black comedies, dark comedies that you really like?
let me have a think about that. What about you? Have you got some dark humors that you remember?
Let me see.
I think I like The Lobster. I don't know if I'd call it full on
Yeah,
dark comedy, but
Yorgos
there is
was
a lot
probably
of.
the first that came to mind. The Lobster's probably kind of a dark comedy. Yeah, let me think of some other
Mm.
ones. What did you
There's one
think
about
about?
Tony Erdmann, a German movie called Tony Erdmann that has Sandra Huller in it. And they were going to remake it with Jack Nicholson, but people thought it was going to be too close to About Schmidt. Noah Baumbach, I think, did About Schmidt, right? That's a great dark comedy as well about his wife dying and this guy going off on his own. But Tony Erdmann is similar. It's got like a lot of dark humor in that, and that's a German one. I think it's from the same director who did one where it was like Guess Who's Back, and it was all about Hitler, like returning to Germany, like as if he'd been in a time machine or something. I remember seeing that,
Is
and that was
that
a
the
foreign
one
movie.
where, yeah, where he comes back to modern time? Is that the one that you're talking about
Yeah,
with Hitler?
yeah, and
Yeah,
he was
I've seen
wandering
that
around
film.
Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what's interesting with the drama is I feel like there was a lot of controversy, and we were talking about this particularly where audiences, I feel like I have not met anyone that has not at least appreciated the drama. And based on the research that I've done, whether it's on social media, reviews on Letterboxd or IMDb, the general
Mm,
consensus is that people liked the movie. They liked the way it made them think. They loved the comedy and
mm,
also just how crazy of a society we live in, the implications of what media does to young adults as well, because there's a big part of that with Emma's character when
mm,
she is a kid and met some adversity and kind of falling in love with the like hyper violent culture that we also have as Americans. I think that Christopher Borgli speaks to a lot of levels, but the audience or the demographic that seemed to not like the film very much, or at least was polarized or split, we should say, is the critics. It seems like if there was any
mm,
demographic right now that has had adversity to this film, but it shows that critics are not the say all be all, is them specifically, and
mm.
audiences really appreciating a film that tests them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's been interesting to see in the discourse is the fact that it was it Rachel, the Alana Haim
Yeah,
character? She'd
Rachel.
done something horrible, right? She'd locked a special needs child, I think it was, in a cupboard in a disused house or like a drug den, and just walked off and left them, right? And apparently there was like a search and rescue out for and all this kind of stuff, and you know, it was I've seen since how people have reacted to her character and the fact that she was so judgmental of Emma's character of Zendaya, right? She was so judgmental of her, yet
Hmm.
she was, she'd done this horrible thing. And Charlie himself, he'd cyberbullied somebody. None of them realized that the three of them have done things that would have sent a personality like Emma, Zendaya's character, into doing something shocking that she was considering doing. You know what I mean? And in fact, one of
That's
the
so
things that
true.
I thought was most interesting is that this forces us to have that conversation. Are we isolating people because of their beliefs rather than showing them a community, rather than embracing them within a community? Because in fact, when I look at Zendaya's character throughout, not the flashbacks, I mean throughout this whole experience, the only time I see her remotely crack is when she stands and drinks that whiskey towards the end, when she's in
Hmm.
her wedding dress and she goes and, you know what I mean? The whole way through, we're talking, look at the speech. We're talking about her laugh. We're talking about the way that she's empathetic. We're talking about the way that she makes him feel good when things are negative and he feels like the world's on top of him. Everything in his speech to begin with, right, is exactly what she is now. And he deletes it all systematically because of what he thought what she thinks she was. You know what I mean?
Or what
Because
she
of this
might potentially
revelation.
be capable of, you know?
Correct. So, and in fact, I prefer to judge the Zendaya of the nowadays because she's been through that transformation. She's got deafness as a result of that hideous thought that she had and that hideous planning that she was doing. You know what I mean? I actually like to see it as, look at her. She pulls his pants down when he's stressing. so that he can see how absurd the world is. You know what I mean? That's precisely what this film does. It shows us the absurdity of us judging people like this. It showed us how crazy it gets. You know what I mean? To the point where that speech by Rachel, which is this absolutely, shocking speech at the wedding where she basically like she doesn't say anything terrible, but she certainly is pretty nasty and tries to ruin the day. You know what I mean? You get this almost like a release where you feel like actually they're the worst people.
Oh
Zendaya's
yeah.
character is actually a really good human being, and has thought some horrible things, and it's whether we can let that go that is the message throughout this film. I mean, don't get me wrong, Brendan. The bits that were the flashbacks were the funniest bits. They were just
hmm
ridiculous when she's recording the video and it has to update the computer. You know, you can tell somebody has sat there like an Anthony Jeselnik as a writer back in the day and thought about these brilliant sort of, humorous things that could happen. Um,
I would say in
and it's
particular
just
the
kind of,
pacing, you know?
yeah,
Like just the way that
I
like
agree.
he paces out the film, the tension, knowing, and I know you knew what was going on, like you ultimately knew what the
Mm,
major turning point was going to be, but for me coming in, I did not know. I made sure not to read anything. I made sure to just be focused on what I know for the film and to be surprised by whatever it was. And I was thinking, well, could it be
mm,
this? Maybe she killed someone. Like, what is something that's so controversial? And I did not expect the turn in terms of her wanting to commit a school shooting that going to be the case, but leading up to that moment, I was like genuinely like anxious. I was very anxious as an audience member
mm,
because there was so much anticipation for what did Emma's character ultimately say, and ultimately you learn that, and you learn a little bit more about these characters, and you just slowly start to
mm,
see that okay, Rachel is potentially the worst person in this film, and then Charlie ultimately seeks out this other girl and physically does something against Emma leading up to the wedding. And it's like now you have
mm,
characters, all three of which have done something that is wrong. And what's funny about Emma's character, speaking to this concept that's really awful, is unexpectedly she's the one that goes and works for like anti-gun groups and lobbying against like better regulation, and they're not against, in favor of better regulation. And ultimately sure, she has this awful thing that she could have done, but then pivots into
mm,
doing a lot of good. And she might not have like originally intended to be a part of that, but it's very funny that this character still, despite what her thoughts were, she did something for the better after it. And that's never factored in. I mean, partially because Robert
I'd
Pattinson's
agree.
character Charlie probably knows the full picture versus Rachel and Mike never dig deeper into who Emma is within the confines of the film. But for what we get to see as an audience, especially by the end of the movie, Emma's character is the least, problematic, at least in the present
Mm.
tense, than all of the other characters there.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like, that speaks into the structure as well, this fact that there's this
Mhm.
idea of constantly starting again, and we get it with Emma's character right from the beginning. When they're in that coffee shop and he comes over and he makes a right hash brown of his first introduction, and he's talking about that, you know, she says, "Let's do this again," and then he goes back and restarts almost, it's like I suppose, like, very Haneke-esque in terms of rewinding it, except
Yeah.
for, again, another shocking thing. But those repeated introductions happen all the way through this film.
Yeah.
And even right to the very end, right to the very last thing. And I like that, this idea of you can't, no matter how bad things get, no matter how bad your mindset gets, you can always restart, you can always reinvent
That's
and
so
begin
true.
again. Even him telling the story of how they met, he's reinvented the narrative. He's choosing to omit out all the negative bits. And this is the only time, this is something that Kristoffer Borgli does so well. It's the only time that we actually have to stare at the shocking thing that befits all of us really. We've all thought of something shocking. You know what I mean? I think that and it kind of deals with it piece by piece, the cheating of Mishka, the cheating of Charlie. You know what I mean? All these different bits that we choose to sort of omit when we reintroduce ourselves. And Zendaya's character Emma embraces that reintroduction and goes, "We can all
Every
start again."
single time. Yeah, that's so true.
Mm,
From the first moment, she is mature enough in some capacity, even when she's getting hit on, which she has all of the right to say no, allows Charlie's
Mm,
character to, hey, just start from the beginning because I can tell you didn't get to like do what you originally intended. I'll allow for there to be a
mm,
reset. Does that even after she says what happened at that like with her friends to everyone's shock. She even tries to reset it then being playful with Charlie that things we can get past
mm,
this. And even at the end, after Charlie's actually done something that's bad and they've gone through that, she's the one that essentially initiates, hey, let's reset, you know? Which
mm.
is that shows that her character is cognizant enough to know that, hey, even if you do something bad, at least within specific parameters, there is a capacity in us to look beyond this.
Yeah, she's the only one who has she realizes the full capacity for
Mhm.
change, because she's the only one
Yeah.
who's experienced the depth of the character, how low we can get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's been to the bottom and been very close to being that person. And I think that it's literally like, you know, learning, you know, everything again and confronting those things and accepting them is why teenage Emma is able to grow and become this better person, and I think
Mhm.
that that's Kristoffer Borgli speaking to America, you know what I mean? Like, we we need to get out of this discomfort somehow, and the only way is by reinventing, the only way is by, acceptance, and I thought that that
That's
was what was so good throughout this.
I would yeah, that's spot on. It was a great movie. I think the
Mm,
drama far exceeded my expectations, and this year's honestly been pretty solid for cinema. I love 28 Years Later, The
it
Bone
has.
Temple. I thought Project Hail Mary was a great film for what its, like, target demographic was, and then the drama honestly
Mhm,
just really blew me away. I felt that it was very sophisticated storytelling. It didn't, like, overstay its welcome. It wasn't overly comedic, and the comedy that was within the film was very tasteful, poignant, and sometimes sharp, but it was very satisfying regardless of what your position was and what ultimately took place in the
mm,
film. And to be able to straddle and walk such a hard tightrope with something that is very taboo and at the same time we've become so accustomed to, which is very interesting.
mm,
It's something that, at least for Americans, every other week there could be a news shooting or a mass shooting, and there's far more that are even that media is able even to talk to. The amount that we have in
mhm,
the year, not every single one is going to be a major headline. And if anything, as years this past, shootings, unless they're super awful, do not stay in the
mhm,
headlines for any longer than 24 hours now. Think of like the time of Sandy Hook, which was very long ago to now. We even just had
mhm.
some shooting incidents recently that were not in the news cycle
Yeah.
for very long. And even to make a
I
movie
think there's
about
been
it shows. Yeah.
113 this year. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, go for it.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. We've become so accustomed to it that even a movie, as awful as the subject matter is, we're able to laugh about it because we become so attuned to it as well, which is also horrifying in a different way.
Mm. It's, I think that it's through having people like Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. Some people were talking about the casting choice and stuff like this. I think you bring through the 2 biggest movie stars in the world today, or arguably 2 of the biggest, let's say that, because,
Mhm,
people will say Chalamet, people will say other things like that. But you bring through 2, sort of late 20s, early 30s movie stars, biggest in the world, a former Disney kid, like Disney Channel kid, like who was involved in her own show and all this kind of stuff. You bring them through and then you put them into something like this that's about mass shootings or certainly about the thought of it, then you make it an issue to be talked about. You're right. The news isn't doing that. Kristoffer
mhm,
Borgli and art is doing that. It's giving us an hour and 46 minutes, I think it was, to stare at
mhm,
the screen and to actually confront this. I was in the theater and there was points where I could see people looking around and clearly they were worried because like, Robert Pattinson's saying, there's all those thousands of people out there. There's one of these every day at least. You know what I mean? Like I said, there's been 113 this year. Um,
mhm.
and it's shocking and it's something that we can only truly break down if we confront it. And yeah, Kristoffer Borgli is putting us firmly on this. And as I said, my cinema was full, and from talking to other
It was
people, their cinemas
packed.
were full too. Mm,
Mhm. It was packed. Everybody that I know have seen it, at least in the New York, LA markets, it was sold out screenings.
Mm,
And this was every type of screening. And, I'm glad to see that people are going out and making time to go see these movies because it's important. The
mm,
success of something like the drama, especially at a time where everyone's like, we need new movies and unique movies to watch. They are out there. We are still making an abundance of really awesome cinema. Some of it might just deliver straight to streaming, but it really takes the audiences being us going out there and supporting films that are not just the major blockbuster motion pictures. It's these
mm,
movies, they can transcend beyond the like typical corporate narrative that comes from a lot of these bigger blockbusters. And I'm super excited to see young directors pushing the medium in ways that felt like the 1970s or the 1990s in terms of subject matter, and having these not so like squeaky clean films where the
mm.
protagonist is the person in a wrong world. Like, that does not work because we've all had weird thoughts. We've all had to experience life through harsh chapters. That doesn't mean we've all thought about maybe doing what Emma's character has done, but everybody goes through a period of like, man, what if X? It's like
Yeah.
we can't just all be so naive, I guess, to the people in the world that we live in because it is not hard, or it's not easy,
Mm.
I should say. Sorry,
Yeah.
not hard, but
No, you're right,
anyways.
and we like to we sanitize it for ourselves, Brendan. I think
Mhm.
that's one of the things as well. We when we tell stories about ourselves, we just did it when we introduced ourselves. You know, every great snapshot doesn't reveal the work getting up to it and the letdowns and the failures and the things like that. You know what I mean? We've all been turned down for
Yeah.
jobs, and we've all, there's all those kind of things. Bill Burr tells a great joke that's all about like when he's at the steering wheel and he's got his hand on the top and he goes, I'm here from just normal driver to, oh, he's killed hundreds of passengers, hundreds of pedestrians, you know what I mean? And then he goes, and I'm back to being
Yeah.
normal again. And he tells this story about the human propensity for horrible things, you know what I mean? And and I always thought that was a very clever, honest joke, you know what I mean? That he could
Mhm.
have been panned for, but I think that's what this does. Making comedies like this, Low Hass has just said probably the only way this film could have worked was with those two stars in it, and I agree entirely. It wouldn't have worked with other stars. It wouldn't have even worked with
Mhm.
any lesser known people or anything like that. It needed to have two absolute worldy stars in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would say Zendaya. I mean, granted, she's done Euphoria, so she's entered more into an adult chapter of being an actor that I would argue, in my opinion, even though you said maybe others might not consider it, Robert Pattinson and Zendaya are literally operating at the top of their game, and most particularly this
Mm,
year. Think of some of the productions that are just around the corner to come out. And Zendaya, what I think, I was talking about this with Kira, what I really appreciate about her is not only is she a
mm,
talented star that is attractive, but you can tell that she really cares about the craft. And since transitioning from being a child actor into some more of these adult roles with suggestive
mm,
themes and heavy subject matter, every single step of the way, you can tell, at least from what it seems on the outside, that she really cares about the image in which she puts into these like films and like crafting these and telling them in authenticity. And for someone like her that has come from being a child actor to be put in a film like
mm,
this, it really has a punctuation to it. And I think Kristoffer Borgli and whoever the casting director spent a lot of time thinking,
mm,
who would be really shocking to hear say that? And someone like Zendaya, who people have been following their whole life. It's like the same thing with Harmony Korine and what he
mm.
did with Spring Breakers, like seeing these child actors then being in this more adult role. It's very shocking.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. Christopher Nolan, casting the kid from Drake and Josh on in
Oh,
Oppenheimer,
yeah.
and he was the guy that is pressing the button for the Trinity test, and I was like, "It's great. Child star, and he's now, you know, dropping the first nuke." You know what I mean? It was like this brilliant thing and great piece of casting. When I heard about that, I was like, "Yeah, nailed it." But you're
Yeah,
absolutely
it's
right. What do you think of the soundtrack? Since we're big Daniel Pemberton fans here, or I definitely am after his soundtrack on Project Hail Mary and his soundtracks on, Spider-Verse and all these other ones. I mean, he did Steve Jobs, amazing, right? What did you think of his three flute soundtrack for this one?
what I liked about it is it felt really it worked really well with the movie, but what I think it did
Mm,
best at was not overstating itself either, being a little bit different. I feel like
mm,
it was natural to the film where I never felt like, oh, the soundtrack was taking center stage. Granted, I would love to watch it again and I could probably speak to the composition a bit better, but at least from the onset,
mm,
due to the subject matter, that was so front and center that it worked really well to elevate the piece more than like try to overpower the piece at any given moment, if that makes sense.
mm. Yeah, that makes total sense. I liked how it was stripped down to the basics. We had
Hmm.
3 flutes, and I watched that. I mean, I think I put it on the last pod. Um, I watched this great Dolby podcast with Daniel Pemberton when he was talking about Project Hail Mary, and he talked about recording
Hmm.
the soundtrack for the drama in the midst of the massive scoring that he had to do for Project Hail Mary. And he said Project Hail Mary took him 2 months to fully record it, the soundtrack.
Hmm.
He said, whereas this was like an afternoon.
Yeah.
And the reason is obviously this is massively stripped down. It's 3 flutes, but I felt like it was so cleverly used. You know what I mean? We had
Hmm.
these like repeated rhythms that kept popping in. There were certain points where it sort of was manic and they were all plastering all over each other. It was very, I think I called it antiphonal. You know, everything was sort of coming from different sides and things like that. And I thought it was so good for showing Robert Pattinson's fractured mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in as opposed to Zendaya's cleanliness and real kind of if you notice that the editing did the same thing, multiple chops when he's walking away from the girl in the wheelchair, chop, 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 and all he's doing is walking along the road, and it looks like it's been shot by about 45 different cameras, you know what I mean? Because it's just constantly chopping, and we're missing whole segments of his walk, you know what I mean? And it was like, this is a guy who's going through some kind of mental trauma right now, and it was so well edited in that moment, and then when he's with Zendaya, it's just these long takes. You know what I mean? These long shots that we just hold on them for as long as possible, and I love that. I thought that was so
Hmm.
cleverly sort of juxtaposed.
I think the filmmaking was awesome. The way that it also kind of
Mhm.
like showed that nightmare of what could potentially happen on the wedding day and the way it illustrated that moment of there being a shooting at the wedding. It was so jarring, but it was right after learning ultimately what she could have potentially done and having that perspective to kind of ground the
Mm,
remainder of that movie, I think was a really awesome like framework for the film. If there was anything I loved the
mm,
most, it was definitely the pacing. The film was never exhausting, even though the subject matter itself was inherently exhausting. He just straddled that perfect balance of let's dissect this world, but let's also keep it very engaging for the audience. That by the end of it,
mm,
you could go and want to talk to your friends about it and ask them the question, what would you do in that situation? It was naturally a moment that had like a lot of energy to it. It wasn't just like complete drear fest from start to finish, or at least from the moment you learned
mm.
until the end, which I really did appreciate.
Yeah, I'd agree with you because it did. It made it excruciating. It made it absolutely excruciating. Every single choice. When we got to that wedding moment, I'm not sure what your cinema was like, but we had an audible gasp when he admits to cheating with Mishka. Like that was the room inhaled. And it was like I looked around like this is because I always sit in the back corner. That goes back to a shooting thing because that was Aurora. And once I heard about that, I was like, I'm always going to sit in the corner now for every single film that I ever go and watch. So I now sit in the corner. It also comes down to I like to see people's heads and how they react to certain bits of films. I like watching, them all sort of like getting giddy and stuff. So the back corner's my place. But yeah, when I was sitting there, I saw an audible gasp. People sat back. There was women with their hands over their mouths, not just women, men as well. But that was a moment where I was like, this was exceptionally well built up to. You know what I
Oh my
mean? Just
God.
so
I would say
yeah.
this film, the last two films where I really felt the impact of the audience and they've only made the experience better was this movie and Hamnet. Are the last two movies
Mm,
where the audience's emotions were like tangible, especially in Hamnet. Every moment where there was
mm,
something where the audience could cry, everybody was crying. There was almost like this general kind of like communal hug, at least for what I felt when watching that film, especially in the final moments when they all reach out.
mm,
You feel like you're an extension of that movie. And this movie did it the
Mm,
same, but you're all trying to examine these characters in real time and reacting to the events that are either building up to or transpiring in real time. And like, you felt that with everyone in the theater. I went by
mm,
myself. Kira was supposed to go, but she wasn't feeling good. So it was packed to the gills. And being able to hear everyone laugh, like you said, gasp, and
mm,
ultimately see what played out to the end of the movie, it was just a really fun time. Again, despite how heavy the subject matter was, Christopher Borgli just did the best trapeze act that I've seen in a long time in a film.
mm. I think that it definitely should speak to, and I think A24 is doing a great job with this, by the way. You know, they very rarely don't hit. Um, this was original,
Hmm.
unpredictable cinema with the slop that we're given, with the recycled shit that we've been, not I say been given, but with the recycled shit that's out there, and has been out there over the last few years. To have something that is so original and unpredictable like this is brilliant. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you come out, like you said, you come out wanting to talk about it. How well do you actually know the person that you're going to marry? You know what I mean? You and I are
Yeah.
both happily married men, but those are questions that we've never really been asked. How well do you know yourself is another great question that you are asked through this
Right.
movie. Who are we to judge others based on our perceived actions, our thoughts, ourselves? How are we to judge anybody other than ourselves? You know what I mean? Are we so afraid of embarrassment that we go through with things that we're unsure about? Like the other three of them all went through with what they did. You know what I mean? And I think that as well, this wedding itself, it was an action that they went through with, even though they weren't feeling it by the end. They had to go
Hmm.
through with it to avoid the embarrassment, and that's something that they're going through with. That's an action that they're doing when they don't fully feel it. And I thought, yeah, man, for a movie like this, I love it, and it reminded me of the time I saw The Lobster. It reminded me of the time seeing Four Lions, and these other movies. Like it's it's definitely been a real highlight. I think that having had this and Project Hail Mary, my AMC card is getting used because 'cause I've seen both of those movies now twice, and it's great. It's such a great yeah, as I said, I'm excited now for Michael, I'm excited now for what else is coming. We've got The Odyssey this year. I was talking to somebody at this beer fest about what we've got coming. Dune 3's coming. Like, thankfully
Dude,
for
we
the
even
rest of
have
this
the
year, we've got some
Christophers.
absolute bangers. The Kristoffer's coming up with,
I'm
Ian McKellen in it,
excited.
right?
Yeah, dude, I love
Mm.
Soderbergh. I love that Soderbergh's taking on a different type of film, and this is still well within the Soderbergh wheelhouse if you've watched his filmography, but to have a film that feels a bit more gentle, especially after Black Bag. I'm super excited, and also didn't
What
even
were
know
your
this movie
thoughts
was
on Black
coming
Bag?
out. I loved Black
What were
Bag. I
your
thought
thoughts?
Black Bag was a return to form for Soderbergh for that like
Mm.
2000s Ocean 11, like that period in between those movies, and even up to like what was the Daniel Craig one with Adam Driver, the like Ocean's 11 kind of like NASCAR version. I don't know why I can't think of the name of that film.
Oh,
I'm a big
Logan
Soder
Lucky.
Yeah, Logan Lucky. I thought it was a cool return to form for that type of era of film, and I honestly think the script
Mm,
worked really well, and the acting was great. I really, really loved the acting in Black Bag, and I feel like it was one of those movies last year that maybe didn't get the appreciation that it deserved. Is again just another fun movie to watch that doesn't overstay its welcome, and it does the job.
mm.
And I think that, I hope Soderbergh comes back, and I know yeah, we got Digger mainly for Chivo, 100%. Super excited to see a new Inarritu film, and always love seeing him to come back. Especially, when was the last time he had his movie? It was Bordeaux or Bardo, and that was what, like 3 years ago now.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I mean, what's most interesting is we know nothing about this film, about Digger. I mean, I don't. Maybe other people know stuff, in which case, please put it in the comments because that'll educate me. But I know nothing about it. I've seen the trailer and it is literally older looking Tom Cruise, been put in some prosthetics, walking around with a spade, a shovel, whatever anyone wants to call it. And he stands up on this sort of like railing and does a dance. End. And we've got one of the coolest, sort of Saul Bass-inspired Anatomy of Murder, uh, poster that I've ever seen, which I'll definitely be buying and putting up here on one of my walls because I love that poster. But yeah, Digger looks great, and I don't know anything about it. I'm just excited.
Dude, I'm super excited. I know we have a Cannes Film Festival right around the corner, so there's going to be some exciting new films coming to that. I think Pedro Almodovar has a new film being Bitter. What is it? It's I literally just saw it. Bitter Christmas. I think we're getting a new
Mm.
Nicholas Winding Refn movie finally, which we have not had a new Nicholas outside of his series like Copenhagen Cowboy or the other one, which has kind of been always been met with like mixed reviews. We have a new Takashi Mike movie coming this year, supposedly. We have a new Powell
In terms of
Pilwowski. Go for it.
In terms of Nicholas Winding Refn, have you seen that interview yet that I told you about with Friedkin,
No,
where he's
not yet.
talking about, oh mate, it is top notch. He basically calls, I think he either says Only God Forgives or he says Drive. One of those movies, his movies, he says is a masterpiece. And Friedkin, who did Sorcerer and everything, Friedkin's
Yeah,
basically turning around and he's going, let's get a medic in here. This guy's crazy. And it's just one of the coolest videos because it's just those two geeking out on film, but Friedkin just pushing him down a peg or two, Nicholas Winding Refn. But I am
dude.
excited. Whatever it is that he's got coming out, I am excited. I love Drive. It is one of my top 5. And I
I
also love
love.
Bronson. If anybody
Oh yeah,
anybody's seen Bronson with Tom Hardy,
dude. The
what
Pusher
a wild
trilogy.
movie that is.
Have you
Yeah.
seen the Pusher trilogy? So good. Pusher
Oh,
2 is like
yeah,
an
I have.
all-time favorite Mads Mikkelsen film. Like him in that film is so, so good. I love early Nicholas Winding Refn. Zach more recently saw his first or second film. I think it's the film he did after Pusher, which I don't even know if you've
Oh,
ever seen
really?
it. Let me look up
I don't know.
which
I'm
one
trying
it
to get on
is.
his
He
film
said it was good. I
filmography
think it's
now.
called Bleeder. Yeah, Bleeder. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, I haven't even seen that. No, I haven't even seen that.
Yeah, I haven't
So you
seen it
said
either.
Zach
It
saw
came.
that?
Yeah, he said it has Mads Mikkelsen as
Mm.
well. He said it was really good.
I'll have to give that a watch. I've seen Valhalla Rising, I've seen Bronson, I've seen Only God Forgives, I've seen Drive. Yeah, I haven't seen
There's a
any of
new
these other ones.
Ryusuke
Neon
Hamaguchi
Demon, I've
film
not
coming
seen.
out this year too. I mean, dude, the Japanese
He
go
did
hard. I
Drive
feel like,
Drive My Car, right? Didn't he?
yeah, Drive My Car. He did that film and another one, I think, in the same year. He did 2 movies in the same year. That guy comes out with like 3 hour long movies every year.
I've really started getting into Asian cinema. It's been something since I started watching some more Bong Joon-ho. I watched Memories of Murder a few times. Uh, if anybody wants to see that on streaming, I think it's on Tubi as well. I think they've got a bunch of Bong Joon-ho movies, like older stuff, The Host, that kind of stuff. That's all
Love the
on
host.
on Tubi, so give those a watch. But yeah, like I've really been getting into it. I watched that one it didn't get nominated for an Oscar last year, but it was a great movie. No Other Choice, Park Chan-wook.
Hmm.
That's a great movie. And if you go back, like the stuff that was inspiring Bong Joon-ho, there's one called The Housemaid that's not the one with Sydney Sweeney in it, right? And that's a belting film. I can't remember who did it, but I watched that one when I was doing some study for
I love
Bong
his The
Joon-ho.
Handmaiden. I love and not Park Chang-wook's The Handmaiden. What an amazing
Park
film
Chan-wook,
that I
yeah.
feel like doesn't get talked about enough. Also, Mubi is killing it too with like all of the films that they've been distributing. Like, dude, I on low key, I kind of like Mubi more than I like Criterion Collection these days.
I knew you were gonna say that. I had a sense you were gonna go there. When you started
I
on
just get
movie, I was like, he's gonna do it. He's gonna say it.
It's just because I'm sick of Criterion Collection releasing like every mainstream Wes Anderson movie and then just not giving
True.
enough love to movies that really need the distribution. I don't know the whole inner
Mm,
workings of what movies need to be prioritized for distribution, but I just miss the days of Criterion Collection doing a little bit more for obscure cinema, where I
mm,
think a movie is doing a far better job of like attracting cinema from all of these different like countries like Argentina and some
mm.
of these South American countries that are producing really awesome movies and making them more accessible to a global audience. I just think that they're pushing the needle a little bit more there.
Mm. We do need that. We need if people are going to do streaming or anything like that, we need to have a ethical streaming service that is going to pay back to world cinema because it was something that I would definitely sit and watch as well. I think that if Mubi can do that, then I'm happy. You know what I mean? Criterion, as I said, they're always going to stay in business because they have that twice a year or 3 times a year sale at Barnes and Noble that I go and sort of like fill up my cart and then realize that I haven't got enough money, so I have to put a load back. I tell you
Dude,
what though, that should be a thing, you know. I would follow an Instagram account that is a guy going to Criterion Collection in Barnes and Noble and just picking out one. He's only allowed one DVD every sale. So it's like, right, I'm gonna have to decide between. I'm trying to think. I'm gonna have to decide. I'm gonna have to decide between worst person in the world or Raging Bull. You know, what am I gonna choose between here? I'd love to watch that.
Worst person in the
You're
world,
only allowed
Raging Bull.
one Criterion.
Dude, that is the days of like, which I still think they do it, right? The 50% off sales. Those are awesome for Barnes
That's
and
what they are.
Nobles, for Criterion. Yeah. I love that.
I worked there, and that was when I back in the day when I first came out here, and I worked there, and they allowed me a table to put out some ideas. Right now, they've got like A24 whole shelves. You know, the A24 they do all the. You've got the scripts. You can buy the DVD with the script. A24 have a really cool setup, especially the one
Dude,
in a Hollywood does.
the packaging for the A24 Blu-rays is better than what Criterion Collection does. It's insane. I have Warfare, Eddington. I have a couple of other A24 films, and what they're able to do with
Mm,
like the postcards and all of this stuff, they make it have a lot more like memorabilia that comes along with it, or merchandising that is like collectibles, which I appreciate. You know, I have all of my little like the
mm.
Odyssey when I went and saw that, or Tenon with the 70 mil cutout, and I even have like Wuthering Heights like little like pocket mirrors that they gave out. I love collecting all of that stuff when you go to the movies. That's what makes it fun, and I know a lot of other people really appreciate that too.
I said to the guy, one of the guys who works for Graham King and is they're doing all the Michael stuff right now. I was like, I was like, you guys have missed out on a trick. I hope you don't mind me saying this. I don't know. He probably won't listen. But I said, you guys are missing out on a trick if you don't give out sparkling gloves at like every screening and just have everybody walking around the malls of America wearing these like Michael
Did
Jackson
you say that
sparkling
to
gloves.
Graham King? Did you say that to
No, I
him?
said
No.
it to his. I said it to his assistant, but hopefully it gets passed on because I'll be like, then I can walk around going, I was passed. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like it's the most original idea. I imagine somebody else has had that idea prior to me, but I want to be able to walk around and be like, I gave him that. That was a criticism. I threw that one at him. You know what I
What
mean?
do you think the Michael popcorn bucket's gonna look like at AMC or whatever? You know how like people do crazy popcorn
Yeah.
buckets? I've never seen those, by the way. Like people are like, I just got the Avatar bucket or whatever. I'm like, where the fuck are these? Because I know, not that I really would want it, but I like never see that as an option anywhere.
Mate, do you know what? I've never seen them either, but I always see them get released because I remember there was like the biggest deal of was like the Deadpool v Wolverine one or whatever it was. I remember seeing that, but it was like I always thought if they had like again, I worked at the Odeon in Rochdale back in the day when I was like 16 years old. All right, the Odeon Cinema, that's like a big chain across the UK. That's like our AMC. When I worked back there, right, they used to have one screen that played classic cinema. So you would have like, you know, Cars and uh, Pirates of the Caribbean on and all this kind of stuff. And then down at the far end, Jurassic Park, right?
Mhm.
93, 94, whatever, right? And it was great. Down at the end, you always go and see some classic cinema, right? I thought if they had something showing and they could do a popcorn bucket for like a classic film, I would go and watch that. They would get, I reckon they'd sell a load of tickets for that. You know what I mean? If you could have
Yeah.
like a dinosaur egg for Jurassic Park, or you could have like proper old school stuff. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of other movies that you could do that to, and I've just kind of disproved myself. But yeah, I mean, like Aladdin, you could have the lamp. You could have all those kind of things, which they never had in the past because they could never generate that amount of popcorn buckets. But now you could. You know what I mean? Do it for some nostalgia because I'm well up for that. You know. But yeah, mate, I've seen the Michael one. I saw a thing this morning, and it's the
There's a
black hat.
bucket
Here, I'm
from
going to show it.
Michael? I was just
Yeah,
kidding.
and it's a black. No, it's a black hat. I'm going to show them. Look at the state of my hair, right? I look like I've been electrocuted, right? It's a black hat, Michael hat, like a trilby, and you put the stuff in it. And I was like, that don't feel hygienic, even if the hat's not been worn. Have you seen it?
Oh, I'm
It's like
literally
the
just,
black Billie Jean hat.
dude. You know what's funny is I
Honestly, you're
was
gonna have to give it a
kidding.
look.
I was kidding. And
Boom.
the fact that
I
this
told
is
you.
real is awesome. I hope it comes with the hair too.
Where's
This
the
is what
gold glove? I would eat my popcorn with the not gold, sorry, silver glove, the sparkly glove. I would eat my popcorn with the sparkly glove. This
it
is
should have
they
been
need to get in
this.
on it, guys. Give me 1%.
My
That is
God.
good. That's shoe. Yeah, you know what? Do it in a thriller
It should have
jacket.
been
That'd be
this.
awesome. Yeah.
Where you literally have Michael staring at you as you eat your popcorn while watching the movie. That's how it should have been.
But there's that gif, isn't there, of Michael eating his popcorn and sort of smiling. There's that gif, right?
Oh,
Or is it a
yeah.
GIF? What do you call it? Right?
No, that
There's
is
that one of
100.
Michael eating
There's that
popcorn.
like
So that
meme.
should
Yeah.
be pull back his
Chris, where
head,
were
and then you can eat the
you should have
popcorn
been
from
brought
inside
onto
him.
the marketing team. You should have been brought onto the
I
marketing
know.
team for this one. Look at that. You can get
I
all
think
these things.
there was a bit of talk about it at one point. I think there was a bit where we were discussing it with some people about potentially being involved. You know what I mean? Because I had some ideas for some taglines, but I can't remember what they were now. But the good one,
Look,
they've come up with a good one. Yeah, I like that.
this is your concept.
That's it. No, mine was just giving the glove out so people can put it on.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
this is taking your idea and
'Cause
taking it
I'd
even a
wear
step
that.
further.
Well, yeah, that looks cool though, doesn't it? Be honest, right? That looks awesome. That looks like an award. I'm telling you, people, if somebody gave me the sparkling glove to sit in the cinema with, I'd be sat there all the time. You know what I mean? All the way through the movie.
If there was like, you know how in
I mean,
K-pop music, if you go to like the concerts,
Yeah.
the people do like the crowd like thing in unison with whatever's happening on the stage. If only we could train Americans. You know what's funny is like these Asian countries or like South Korea, they're all about participation. Imagine like trying to get an American audience like halfway through. There was a whole like, hey, follow along and Michael during like the thriller moment where everyone's glove lights up, and in the movie theater you had to like dance
like
to
a
like the
Coldplay
what's on
concert.
this screen. Does that ruin the theatrical experience, or does that make it better if like everyone
Absolutely not. Mate, they should. Let me tell you something, right? This is a biopic, fine, okay, and great, and I'm sure that Antoine Fuqua has directed the hell out of it, right? But I'm telling you now, right? They should have done like a concert version or something, because Antoine's music videos are awesome, right? And it would be really cool to just have people have a musical experience with this. Remember that Indian film RRR? I know I can't say it with my
Yeah.
accent. Remember that? Triple R, we'll call it from now on, because it sounds horrendous. It sounds like I'm a seal, right? But that movie, they used to set off fireworks inside, indoor ones, safe, hopefully, right? But they used to set off all kinds of things. If you watch Indian cinema, when they were showing that, it looked like a riot. And I was like, do that for Michael. Let's have it when he does Billie Jean and when he does the moonwalk. You could have like fireworks going off and all kinds of stuff like that. You know, spray some streamers when he first, does a kickflip. I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, that's how Michael needs to be seen. Because otherwise, the other thing is, we talked about it last week. All these music biopics, they all get very cookie cutter after a while. I want something that's going to sort of electrify audiences. And you're doing Michael Jackson's music. Like, that is global. The guy, like, was hit after hit after hit. I don't know what they're going to do for the Beatles one that's going to be 4 movies released on the same day. That's going to be nuts.
Is it
What are they
all
doing
on
for
the
their
same
popcorn
day?
bucket?
They were. I
Yeah.
thought they were. Why? I don't know how I feel
4
about
on
this
one
movie,
day,
but
mate.
isn't it supposed to be from the perspective of each individual Beatle? Like,
Yeah.
right?
And they merge into each other's. Stories. Yeah.
That reminds me of this one movie. I don't know if you've ever seen this from back in the day, Eleanor Rigby, The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby. Have you ever heard of that movie?
Never heard of it.
This
I
was
know that
just
was a song by the Beatles.
I think it was the Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby. So this director, the film wasn't ultimately that good, but if you ever want like a more obscure indie film, he did this film called The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, and it was cut 3 different ways. Them, which was the shared perspective of this love story, then the disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, him, and then her, which is now only from their perspective. And it was like 3 movies that all came at once by Ned Benson. I don't even know what this guy ended up going on to do. Black Widow writer. But I highly recommend this just because it was a cool way of recutting a film to show the different perspectives and building upon that. And then there's one shared film. So early Jessica Chastain.
That's a cool idea. That's a great concept.
Maybe not that early, 2013.
The only thing is, then you invested. The the problem what we're having with this Beatles one is you're invested in every movie. You know what I mean? It's like it feels like, right, we're not doing one movie where everybody can buy into it. We're gonna do 4 separate movies, so you have to kind of watch all 4 of them to get a concept of it. And it's like, my God, that's a commitment. You know what I mean? Like, I'm somebody who would happily go and sit in a screening of Kill Bill both parts with a 15-minute interval in the middle, like they did that last year, right? Which was awesome. Lionsgate released it,
Mhm.
right? But like to do 4 movies on one day, you know, like imagine being a father saying goodbye or a mother saying goodbye to your kids. I'll be back at 8 p.m. on 10 p.m. tonight. So like because I've got to go and watch all 4 Beatles movies. It's just absolutely crazy.
Here's what I'll
Or
say
you
is
go and watch them day after day after day.
at least it seems like he's not trying to take the traditional biopic approach that we don't like, and he's trying to do something that is maybe more of an event that's broken across a couple of films that will interweave if you get the chance to see all of them. It seems like his
Mm.
approach is really strong. And I mean, these movies aren't even coming out until 2028. So the time of which that's going into it, you can see like Barry Keoghan and all of these actors are speaking to how much time is being put into the making of these movies. Greg Fraser on the production. I mean, Sam Mendes kind of needs a comeback after his last film, Empire of Light, which I haven't even seen, but I know most people just
That
did
was
not
good.
enjoy. You liked it?
That was good. Roger Deakins shot it. Yeah, it's all about cinema. I thought it was good, but again, it was so subdued in comparison to 1917, and I
Mm,
didn't see the marketing well for it. In fact, it's only because I'm a Sam Mendes fan that I knew that this was even coming out. Like
mhm.
I genuinely didn't know anything about it before going in, and then when I saw it, I was
I
like,
didn't.
"Oh, it's great," but it felt like a British film that didn't get the backing. It felt a lot like All of Us Strangers. Great British film, never got the backing marketing-wise over here for people to see it. I imagine it was really well marketed in the UK, but yeah, not over here, and it's a big shame. It's same with Ken Loach films. There's some brilliant Ken Loach films that never got properly released out here, never got any
Mhm,
where near the presentation for British social realist films. You know, he did one called Looking for Eric that's really good, that's all about soccer that I know that my American soccer fan friends would love, right? And it's such a great film. And then he did other movies like The Wind That Shakes the Barley, just never got an audience out here. You know, there's some great movies that Ken Loach did. Kes, brilliant films that are about Northern England, and they won Cannes, some of them. You know what I mean? It's won
mhm.
Palm d'Ors. It's just he's never really had an audience over here. It's pretty crazy. He did one called The Old Oak that's all about immigrants. Brilliant film. One called
I mean,
I,
it's kinda
Daniel
like the
Blake, which
Dardenne
literally
brothers.
won Cannes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the Dardenne brothers. Sometimes these films, they might get like limited release, but they just don't catch on in the United States. Or just a lot of
No.
films that go to like Cannes Film Festival just do not get distribution in the United States. I even know there's a
Mm,
couple of Palme d'Or winners. Sometimes even after they win, it's a little bit it takes time for them to have any type of streaming release within the United States. It can be tough,
mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look at Titan. We
Yeah.
saw Titan like I saw Titan like a year and a half. I know that you and I talked about it as soon as I'd seen it, and it was one of those where it won Cannes, and I was like, no disrespect to Julia Ducournau, but I remember watching Titan and being like, this beat out everything. You know what I mean? I was just blown away that I was like, do I not understand the tastes of the European audience anymore? You know what I mean? Like, have I got a different taste now that I live out in America? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, but we saw that so late, it was kind of like past. Parasite is the one that I think has been is the only one that's been universally accepted, you know, around, you know, globally.
Even
Universally is
Deep
basically
Pan,
saying
which won
globally. Why
that
do I say
one
that?
year. Yeah, didn't yeah,
Yeah.
I was really and her new film, what's it called? Alpha is actually about to come out. I saw this right as it I remember I saw this opening day in the US in theaters, Teton, and I really loved Raw. I thought Raw was an excellent film. If
Mm,
you haven't seen this one, based out of the 2 movies that she's gone to direct. I don't know if she did anything before Raw. Likely did, considering the
mm.
budget of this movie. Raw is one of the few films. Have you seen this movie, Chris?
No, never.
This is one of the few films that actually, like,
I'll write it
traumatized
down.
me to the point where I wanted to, like, gag. It was so disturbed. And I was super excited
Wow.
because Julia was known to be this director that shows really striking and strong imagery. Like, this is a great body horror movie. And Teton, people were like, this is the level up from that. This is, if you thought Raw was tough to watch, this is even tougher. Like, Raw is literally
Mm.
about a woman who I think is either a vegan or a vegetarian to start, who then slowly gets the taste for like human flesh. And it is
Wow.
Disturbed. And it's a great, great directorial, like, I think it's her directorial debut. Let's look. I could be wrong. I want to speak to this. Uh so Raw, she did a TV movie before that and then did a short film. So this was maybe her first like studio or like indie, directorial debut outside of this like TV film that she did. And it was exceptional. And then Teton, and yeah, this won the Palme d'Or. This was like the big movie of the year. And I think for you, what I was so disappointed with was not the fact that like the movie was just fucking weird. I did appreciate it for what it was, even though I didn't understand like the car baby that ultimately came out at the end. Um,
That's
but
where
it just
I'm at,
was.
by the way. I'm the same as you on that. I appreciate the visuals. I appreciate it for what it was as a kind of surrealist piece of cinema, but
Mhm.
I couldn't get on board with it. I'm in the same boat as you. Sorry, carry on, mate. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just
I
expecting it
love
to
my
be more
car.
hyper violent, you know? Like that's just I think I was
Yeah.
let down by the direction which it took because I also love like the Nicholas Winding Refn hyper violent cinema and I feel like there's such an awesome gap that could be filled with that segment of movie and I thought Teton was going to kind of be with it and there was some definitely some violent moments. The moment when she's like bashing her face off the sink to like break her nose and rearrange some of the elements to kind of go undercover as she's fleeing is absolutely
Mm.
insane. Like that moment is insane. The moment where she sticks like the chopstick in the person's ear, insane. Like very intense moments, but it wasn't to the same level that I personally appreciated with Raw. And I'm curious to see what
Mm.
Alpha again, another Palme d'Or film, or not Palme d'Or film, another Cannes Film Festival film that was really appreciated. It even
Mm.
yeah, it got selected, so I think it's finally getting distribution through Neon in cinemas, and I'll be curious to see. This one didn't seem like it was, as appreciated, you know?
Yeah. As I said, it would be really cool to have cinemas out here that are dedicated to this kind of cinema. You know what I mean? Foreign, um, independent films. You know what I mean? And showing
Yeah,
them like this. It would be really cool to go and see some of these films and see what they're like in a cinema because I only ever get to see them, as I said, either on streaming or on hard, on physical media. So it's something that I really want to know what it's like to see this in the room with other people and see what their reactions are like because I never really get to, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So it would be cool.
I hope Terrence Malick's new movie comes out this year. Ugh,
Yeah, we were talking about him the other day because we were watching a bit of Thin Red Line, weren't we, when we were around at yours? And yeah, I love Terrence Malick. I think that he's great. And again, like, just we were talking about visually, it's very clear that who he is. You know what I mean? His fingerprint is so distinctive. You know what I mean?
yeah, I agree, and he's kinda has
Yeah.
that, like, Kaufman-esque look, especially right here.
He's got a look of John Belushi,
Yeah, very
wouldn't you say?
interesting. Yeah. Dude, I love these photos. These are new. It used to be hard when I was first studying him, like to find any photos. Imagine like this dude. I love this look. The fact that he rocked
Yeah.
this and just made, dude, Badlands, great. What a G. Dude, look at this guy. Absolute G. Great photo.
And you told me, so he studied philosophy, didn't he, at in France? Is that right?
MIT.
That
I
correct?
think he studied
MIT.
philosophy at
Sorry. Yeah.
MIT and then taught it either at MIT or at some university over in France. So the
Mm.
guy is definitely yeah, he has his new film. It's supposedly coming out this year. The Way of
Let's
the
do an
Winds.
episode on him. Let's do an
Dude,
episode on him
100%.
just purely so we can talk about it. Because I liked when you did the one on Kubrick and on Eyes Wide Shut because it allowed us to sort of focus on something that, was
Yeah.
you knew every single thing about it for as somebody who I could go to as an encyclopedic knowledge of it. And I think that you're similar on Terry Malick. And it's somebody that I
Dude.
really want to learn about more, you know.
That will take a long that I need to have a whole revisitation, especially just to be able to, like one, I need to revisit his last movie, which I know a lot of people really loved, which I can never remember the name, his last World War II film. That one was one that I did not appreciate at the time, and I think you and I even spoke about that more recently, and his movies are good, there's a lot of films within his filmography that are lesser appreciated that I've found appreciation through a specific lens of being semi-autobiographical, and I think Terrence Malick, despite him kind of falling into this very specific convention that people have come to either love or hate, Hidden Life, that's a good one. Um, I think he's a very like unique filmmaker that, to be honest, like the Scorseses, the Francis Ford Coppolas, and those types we're just not going to have for very much longer. He was a very
True.
interesting and important part of film history, and one that did things that other filmmakers have never gone on to do again. And I would love to see him to come out with hopefully what will be a couple more projects. Even his documentary, Voyage of Time, was insane. Like if I got to see that at
I've not seen
California
that.
Science Center projected, and it was an absolutely humbling experience. And someone to be able to go on doing something Tree of Life to then Voyage of Time, and then considering even when you were last here, we were talking about The Thin Red Line. He's able to cover so many different concepts. I mean, even his Pocahontas movie, why can't I think of that film? The one with Colin Farrell is a great. The New World is a great film.
New World.
Like
Yeah.
Kristoffer Plummer in that, who supposedly hated Terrence Malick after that film for shooting 2 million feet of film and him nearly being cut out of the film completely. Is crazy to think. His next film is coming out through Netflix, and he says some really interesting things about the choice to do that. That's what Terrence Malick said. Interesting. Yeah, I did not know that. So
Let's have a look at that. Oh, yeah. Tell you what, the commenter of the day is definitely to Lohas, who's been giving us some absolute blinders, including when we were talking about Titan, just wrote, I love my car. And that was a great comment. I love that comment. So well in, you have been the commenter of the day for us. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, this was an awesome conversation. I know that we're going to be back this Sunday with a new topic. And do you want to announce what it's going to be here? You want to drop it on socials?
Yeah. No, let's do it for the people who've stuck with us through this this new day on Tuesday. But we'll be back on Sunday, and we're going to do. We've talked about films, we've talked about directors, we've talked about directors' best films, we've talked about directors' lesser known films. So now I feel like it's time to just go into a part of cinema that I love, perhaps my favorite piece of cinema. I talked to Stevie Edlin about this on a thing, who was the cinematographer of Wake Up Dead Man. We love soundtracks, and I can't get enough of soundtracks. I will download the soundtrack after I go to a movie and listen to it religiously on my way to and from work or when I'm driving places. So we're going to do soundtracks. And if you're going to go into soundtracks on an episode of the Film Hang, then you have to start off with an absolute GOAT. And the person that I want to focus on is the one and only John Williams. So we're starting on Sunday with John Williams. So guys, go and listen to your Jurassic Parks, go and listen to your Jaws, go and listen to Saving Private Ryan, go and listen to every soundtrack that he kind of is. I'm going to send out some great Instagram posts about him. Learn them. We're going to talk about it on Sunday. Tell us what your favorite is going to be.
I'm super excited about that. I know I'm going to learn a lot from you and Chris. Awesome next Film Hang. Make sure to like and subscribe, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram. Chris has been doing a really awesome job of doing these awesome like director and just filmmaker breakdowns. So our Instagram tries to not only be about this, but other aspects of filmmaking. So yeah, we're super excited. Continue to give us a follow. You know what film I'm going to revisit this week because it's been some time?
Bring it.
Peter Jackson's King Kong. I watched this really awesome video essay, and that was like an all-time fave as a kid, and I want to see where it stacks up. So that's something I'm going to be watching. Unfortunately, not John Williams, but it'll be a fun movie to maybe have a little sidebar conversation on.
James Horner, and it was one of James Horner's lasts before his unfortunate demise, so it's definitely one of the coolest soundtracks. And my favorite bit in it is when they are on Central Park ice, and he's spinning around on his bum, King Kong, and the music is just exceptional. It's such a beautiful bit of music that's accompanying that. So while we're on soundtracks, King Kong, Central Park.
I'll look into that. All right, Chris, see you on the next one.
See you on the next one, man.